See, this El Nino event, it has been in news recently also. Like in 1 year back, we were having a strongest and longest El Nino ever in the recorded history. Okay, if you remember, like we had consecutive drought periods. Two years, like we consecutively had this deficient monsoon, as well as we were facing drought season, right? Both of those years, like it was El Nino year. Okay, so El Nino is having a relationship with Indian monsoon that we will discuss later. Okay, so again, just after 1 year, again El Nino is in news. And if you see the previous year questions from this topic, all the time, whenever the El Nino is evolving in a particular time, okay, they will be asking either question for your mains exam or for your prelims exam. In 2010 as well as in 2011, they asked question for your prelims exam. Then in 2014, this last El Nino when it began to evolve. Okay, in 2014, they asked a question related with the El Nino for your mains examination. Okay, so in this year also you can expect a question from the El Nino event. So simply El Nino means like the change in the temperature of the water lying over the southeastern Pacific Ocean, equatorial southeastern Pacific Ocean. Okay. Before discussing how the El Nino is changing the events or how it is influencing the climate, let's first see what are the conditions taking place there over a neutral year. Neutral year in the sense like it's normal condition. It is neither El Nino nor La Nina, just normal condition. So normally, okay, consider this is the Pacific Ocean and this is the equator side. So this side will be having South America, and on the other western side will be having Indonesia, Australia, Philippines, the entire continents. Okay. So what happens here is during a normal condition, which is a wind that is blowing from through the equator regions, which is a wind blowing through the equator regions, trade winds. Okay, on both sides of the equator we will be having trade wind, and trade wind, they are generally easterlies. They will be moving from east to west. So suppose, consider we are having trade winds moving through the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It will carry the warm water or warm surface water from the eastern Pacific towards the western Pacific. Right? Imagine the wind is moving over the ocean surface. It will drag the ocean water along with the wind, right? So this will carry the warm surface water from the eastern Pacific towards the western Pacific. Now what we are having is, here the warm water will get piled up, because on its way it will be blocked by the continents. So that on the western side of the Pacific, equatorial Pacific, the warm waters will get piled up. Okay, and here what happens is that it already lost the warm water, right? So in order to compensate for that lost amount of water, the water from the depth of the ocean will rise up, and this term we call it as upwelling. And the water from the depth, it will always be cold. So on the eastern side of the ocean we are having cold water, and on the western side of the ocean we are having warm water. So this is the case of the ocean water movement in the normal condition. Now here just think about the atmospheric pressure. Think about the atmospheric pressure. Air lying over the warm regions or warm ocean water, it will also be warm, right? So that which pressure will be there? Low pressure or high pressure? It will result in low pressure conditions. So now if you consider the atmospheric conditions, we will be having low pressure condition over the western Pacific and high pressure condition over the eastern Pacific, because the air lying over the cold ocean water, it will be cold and it will be denser and will be having high pressure. Okay. Now if you look at the wind movement, wind will always move from high pressure towards low pressure, right? So here we are having high pressure on the right side, so that this will be conducive for the movement of the trade winds. Trade wind is moving from east to west, right? If you look at the pressure wise also, we are having high pressure on the east and low pressure on the west. So this is the case of ocean water movement as well as the atmospheric air movement or pressure system during normal condition. Now let's take a look at the its circulation pattern. Circulation pattern in the sense, wherever we are having low pressure, if it's on the surface, it will always rise up, whether in the case of equatorial low pressure belt or in the case of subpolar low pressure belt. Wherever we are having low pressure on the surface, air will rise up, resulting in more precipitation. Okay. If you apply it here, on the western side of the Pacific Ocean, when trade wind reaches here, it will rise up, resulting in more rainfall for the Western Pacific region. You can say it anyways. Since air is rising up, and this is actually a coupled system. Wherever the wind is moving, wherever wind is converging, it will always rise up, and this leaves behind a low pressure at the surface. Okay, so wherever we are having low pressure, it means that the air is rising up over there, whether it is convection or whether it is normal wind circulation, be it anything. So on the left side we are having low pressure and warm ocean water. On the right side of the ocean, in the sense like Eastern Pacific Ocean, we are having high pressure and cold ocean water. Now, air will rise over the low pressure, resulting in more precipitation and rainfall for the Western Pacific, and it will go through the upper air towards the Eastern Pacific, and it will subside here. So now, if you look at the atmospheric air circulation, what is happening here is, through the surface, the wind will or the air will move from the Eastern Pacific towards the Western Pacific. It will rise up from the Western Pacific. Okay. Then through the upper air, it goes back to the Eastern Pacific, and it subsides over the Eastern Pacific. Clear? So this is the circulation pattern, and this is the pressure system, and the ocean water system prevailing over a normal condition in equatorial Pacific Ocean. Okay, so remember these three things. Here the rainfall will be more over which place? Western Pacific or Eastern Pacific? Rainfall will be more over the Western Pacific. Okay, and here we will be having calm conditions comparatively. Fine. Now if you remember regarding tropical cyclones don't form over the southeastern Pacific Ocean, because we are having the cold ocean current moving towards there, and the sea surface temperature is less over the southeastern Pacific. Okay, so this is the reason there. Now let's look at the El Nino condition. During an El Nino event, simply or El Nino event means that the warm ocean water will stay over the Western Pacific. Okay, so the ocean water over the Western Pacific, it will be warmer. Fine. So let's see how it is been formed. So normally we know that we are having trade wind here. And just suppose, consider a case where trade wind is weakening. Trade wind is weakening. So that what happens is, the warm water from the Western Pacific won't be carried towards the Eastern Pacific. So the warm water will stay there because the trade wind is weakening, right? So here it will be generally cold, because usually it was warm because the warm water was carried to the Western Pacific. Now it is not taking place, so that we can say comparatively the Western Pacific, it will be colder. So this is the case of ocean water during an El Nino year. Okay, now if you consider the pressure system, we will be having high pressure on which side? On the colder side. So here on the Western Pacific we will be having high pressure, and on the Eastern Pacific we will be having low pressure. Now again look at the atmospheric cycle pattern or atmospheric circulation or air circulation through the upper air. Here we are having low pressure, right? So it will rise up and it will move towards the Western Pacific. It subsides over the Western Pacific. So the circulation is reversed, or it is like ulta in this case when comparing it with the normal year. Understood? Fine. Now consider the rainfall and precipitation pattern. On which side we will be having higher precipitation? Over the eastern side or warmer side we will be having more precipitation, and on the western side we will be having drought conditions, and rainfall will be reduced over the western regions. Now if you consider upwelling, the normal year we were having upwelling, right? But in this case, like El Nino year, we won't be having upwelling, so that the cold ocean water stays over the ocean's depth. It will not rise up. And you should understand that this actually is having effect on marine resource. If the ocean water is having more nutrient rich, or like it is having more dissolved nutrients is there in the ocean water lying over the depth. Okay, so if it is rising to the surface, or if upwelling is taking place, the plants or phytoplanktons will thrive over this nutrient rich water. Since in the El Nino's case, since the upwelling is not taking place, that means less amount of nutrients are reaching the ocean surface. So less amount of phytoplanktons, less amount of the marine resource. Fine. So regarding El Nino, you should remember certain keywords. One thing, this is taking place over the equatorial Pacific Ocean. I am not speaking about southern equator or like north equatorial Pacific. Rather, it is taking place along the equatorial Pacific Ocean. It means that on both sides of the equator. And normally this takes place along the Peruvian or like the Chile coast in South America. So that region is important for us. Have you seen, like, do you know which kind of desert is prevailing over the South American region? Atacama Desert. Okay, so this year you can expect a question related with the formation of Atacama Desert, since that region is important for us. Or you can expect like what are the bordering states of Peru or bordering states of Ecuador. So remember both of those things, Ecuador, Peru, as well as the formation of Atacama Desert. We have already asked a question for that in our test series. If you want, you can refer that question. Fine. See, since trade wind is weakening, it doesn't mean that we are not having any kind of wind here. The trade wind means it's a normal prevailing wind moving from east to west. Suppose it is getting weakened and it is blowing in the other direction. We cannot call it trade wind anymore, right? So since trade wind weakening here doesn't mean that we are not having any other wind. See, here we will be having low pressure here, right? And here on this side will be high pressure. So wind will move from which side? From the west towards the low pressure. So through the surface, the wind is moving towards the eastern Pacific Ocean, which is opposing the movement of trade wind. So that in a sense, like, we can say that the trade wind get weakened or it will get even reversed. So now here what we are having is the warm water will be carried towards the west eastern Pacific.
Upwelling will take place?
No, upwelling will not take place here. Okay, on the west eastern side of the continent, we are always having warm water or warm current, okay, irrespective of the latitudes or the places, not latitude, irrespective of the places. In tropical regions, we are having, on the western side we are having cold ocean current, and on the right side we are having, or the eastern side we are having warm current. Okay, so here upwelling won't take place. Rather, the temperature will be more extended towards the eastern side, or the effect of the upwelling will be overridden by this warm water movement. Understood? So regarding El Nino, what you should remember is it's taking place on the equatorial Pacific, and eastern side of the equatorial Pacific will get comparatively more warmer than the western Pacific. More rainfall and everything will be for the eastern Pacific, and on the western Pacific we will be having dry conditions. Okay, and regarding the ocean water movement, warm water on east, cold water on left, high pressure on west and low pressure on east side. And regarding the atmospheric circulation, the circulation pattern of the equatorial circulation, it will be changed, okay, or it will change. Fine. Now let's consider the effects of El Nino. One thing, reduced precipitation. Reduced precipitation in the sense, like, the precipitation is not reduced throughout the globe, rather it is reduced only to the which side? During El Nino year we are having warm water on the eastern side. So on the western side we will be having reduced precipitation. Okay. So generally you can say that reduced precipitation, or generally precipitation, in the sense precipitation pattern will be altered. So if I am asking, during an El Nino year, precipitation will be reduced throughout the globe, true or false? False. On some side the precipitation will be higher, and on the other side the precipitation will be less. Okay. Next, floods. Think about the South American regions, which is like the Chile or the Atacama Desert or those regions. If you are having more rainfall over those regions, which they are not regularly having, or it is not a usual case in the case of South America. If you are having more rainfall over the South America, it will result in flood conditions. At the same time, where the rainfall is deficient or precipitation is deficient, we will be having drought conditions. Okay. And another, forest fire. If we are having dry conditions, it can result in forest fire, and thus it can even cause climate change or the globe to warm. El Nino is having a relationship with the climate change. El Nino will increase the global warming. Okay. Marine resources. See, if warm water is getting carried towards the eastern Pacific, there the nutrients rich cold water will not upwell towards the surface, so that the phytoplanktons will be reduced and it will affect the marine resources. So actually the El Nino event, they are observed, or we comes to know that when it is occurring, the marine resource will be reduced over the eastern Pacific, fine, especially in the Peruvian and the Ecuador or such coast. Temperature. As I already said, like every year, if you are having an El Nino year, it will be the warmest year till then. Okay. So what happens is that, see, through different processes, if you are having warm water towards the eastern Pacific, this alters the entire equatorial circulation, resulting in marine damage. Okay, marine ecosystems will be damaged and their carbon uptake will be reduced, and more amount of heat will be released towards the atmosphere. Now think about the eastern side of the Pacific Ocean. If you are having east, this is west, consider the eastern equatorial side of the Pacific Ocean. Earlier in the normal case, we were having cold water here, but now it is been replaced by warm water. So that means more amount of heat is released towards the atmosphere, which can result in the increase of temperature. Understood? Now heat wave conditions, again it will be associated with drought condition as well as elevated temperature, will result in the heat wave conditions. Now regarding cyclones, on the eastern Pacific, during normal condition we are not having cyclones, right, on the southeastern Pacific Ocean. But during El Nino year, since warm water is getting carried towards the eastern Pacific, it will result in more incidences of the hurricanes, the more incidences of cyclones over the southeastern Pacific Ocean. At the same time, the cyclones in the northern or the hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean, it will be reduced. So regarding cyclones, tropical cyclones will be increased over the eastern Pacific and will be diminished over the Atlantic Ocean during an El Nino year. Understood? So remember these effects. It can come for you as statement type of questions. Then climate change. How El Nino is affecting climate change? It will reduce the carbon uptake, okay, or it will result in forest fire, and those things results in climate change, because if you are having forest fire, entire branches, twigs, everything will be burned and they are emitting carbon dioxide while burning. Understood? Then more than everything, like so far we discussed about the climatic effects, right? But El Nino is having more socio-economic effects than the climatic effects, or like with the climate effects, more socio-economic effects will be there. For example, consider like the Western Pacific, or consider specifically Vietnam and Philippines. Vietnam is highest exporter of rice, and at the same time Philippines not cultivating rice, but their staple food is rice and they are importing a lot of rice from Vietnam. Okay, and why Vietnam is able to produce much amount of like rice or paddy? It's because like they are having Mekong River's delta. This rice has been cultivated over the Mekong River's delta. So during an El Nino event, the flow over the Mekong River will be reduced. So what happens is that their rice cultivation is getting affected. Since rice cultivation is getting affected in like the Vietnam, it will result in famine conditions over the Philippines. So it is now turning into a socio-economic effect. Or if you consider the South American regions where flooding is there, people there won't be able to cope up with this kind of flash flood, right? So that they will have to migrate from one place to other places, resulting in immigration issues and everything. So again, like we are having socio-economic effect. Or in the India's case, if you consider we were having like back-to-back drought conditions, and during that time it affects our food production as well as resulting in farmer crisis and everything. So El Nino is having the climate effects as well as that of economic effects. Okay. Briefing through the climate effects, like the precipitation pattern will be altered, then floods, drought condition, heat wave as well as forest fire. And regarding temperature, it will increase the temperature of the globe, or resulting in global warming, thus by favoring climate change. Cyclones. On the southeastern Pacific, we will be having increased number of cyclones on the Atlantic we will be having reduced hurricanes. Understood? In the case of India, specifically, like the effect of El Nino is that one, it directly affects our monsoon. If you are having an El Nino event, okay, the equatorial air circulation will be altered. So this reduces the monsoon winds, so that it will reduce the monsoonal rainfall for India. Okay, you don't need to understand the logic of how the air circulation is affecting the monsoon winds. Okay, it is out of our scope. So just understand this, and El Nino is having, you know, a relationship with the Indian monsoon. Whenever the El Nino year is there, okay, with statistical data we can say that over like 70 or 60% of the time we will be having reduced or deficient monsoon during the El Nino event. So directly it is resulting in drought conditions also. Another case, El Nino year will result in dry winter. Dry winter means we are not having winter rainfall. The winter rainfall is connected with western disturbance. So we can say that the El Nino event reduces the rainfall during winter season and will affect our rabi crop cultivation, our food production, and everything will be affected. Fine. So these are the main three effects of El Nino on India. Now let's look at the La Nina year. So during the El Nino year, we were having warm water on the eastern Pacific and cold water on the western Pacific. And during a normal condition, we were having cold water, relatively cold water on the eastern Pacific and warm water on the western Pacific. Now La Nina means, you know, a strong neutral air condition, or neutral air conditions we will be having more colder or stronger colder upwelling will take place over the eastern Pacific. So during a La Nina year, the eastern Pacific it will be colder than usual. Rather during the El Nino event, it was warmer than usual. Fine. So in El Nino year, like we will be having warm, cold water lying over the eastern Pacific, and we will be having more warm water lying over the western Pacific, and this will result in low pressure created over the western Pacific. See, this is actually the normal conditions case, but it will be much more strong. The rainfall will be more strong over the western Pacific and will be much more colder over the eastern Pacific, resulting in dry conditions for the eastern Pacific nations or South America generally. Now the case of like atmospheric pressure condition, low pressure on the western side, high pressure on eastern Pacific. And if you think about the atmospheric air circulation, here we can say that the strong wind, the trade wind will be much more stronger. In normal case, we were having usual trade wind which will carry the warm water from the eastern Pacific towards the western Pacific. Now imagine a case, the strength of the trade wind they are increasing. So more amount of warm water will be carried from the eastern Pacific towards the western Pacific, resulting in the La Nina year. And again this alters the atmospheric circulation pattern. Fine. And in the case of La Nina is having a positive relationship with Indian monsoon. During a La Nina year, we will be having it is positive condition for Indian monsoon. That means like we will be having more above normal monsoon will be there. Understood? So El Nino reduces the Indian monsoon rainfall and La Nina increases the Indian monsoonal rainfall. Let's solve some previous questions from this topic. First of all, see the year, it's 2011. In 2011 as well as in 2010 was in current affair. So that's why they asked a question for the prelims examination. And in 2014 we are having a mains question from this topic. In 2014 also El Nino was in news. I told you about the strongest and longest El Nino, right? It was named as Godzilla El Nino, and it took place during the or started in the year 2014 and lasted at the end of the season for 2015 as well. Fine. Now go through the question. La Nina is suspected to have caused recent floods in Australia. Again, a current affair question, right? Now how is La Nina different from El Nino? So what is being asked here is how La Nina is different from El Nino. Again, two statement question, we cannot apply any elimination method and everything. Just go through the statement. La Nina is characterized by unusually cold ocean temperature in equatorial Indian Ocean, whereas El Nino is characterized by unusually warm ocean water in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. True or false? False. La Nina is not in the case of Indian Ocean. It's okay. Now if you look at the second part of the statement, it's true, right? Only the first part is wrong. So the first statement is wrong. The second one, El Nino has adverse effect on southwest monsoon, but La Nina has no effect on Indian monsoonal climate. Here there is a no, okay. I think in that projector it got cropped. True or false? Has no effect on monsoonal climate. La Nina increases the monsoon rainfall, El Nino decreases the monsoon rainfall. Again, the second statement is also wrong. So the answer come out as neither one nor two. See the here, if you have simply studied the concept of El Nino and La Nina, you will be easily able to get into the answer, right? For the short term climatic predictions, which one of the following events detected in the last decade is associated with occasional weak monsoon rain in Indian subcontinent? What will be the answer? It's an ABCD question. See, El Nino and southern oscillation. And here, see this term, El Nino and southern oscillation. So this term is called as like ENSO. This is one of the term which you should remember regarding the El Nino. So here, the EN term, it represents the change in the ocean water movement taking place during an El Nino year. And the southern oscillation part, it represents the change in the wind pattern. Okay, so simply as simple as that. El Nino means change in the ocean water movement. Southern oscillation means change in the air circulation. Fine. There are another term which you should remember is one, Walker circulation. So you remember the air circulation which was taking place during the normal condition. We were having surface, we were having trade wind. Okay, it will carry the warm water from eastern Pacific to western Pacific. It will rise up, it will go towards the again eastern Pacific and it will subside. This we call it as Walker circulation. So Walker circulation means normal equatorial air circulation. Understood? Another term you should remember, upwelling. Upwelling means movement of cold ocean water from the depth of the ocean towards the surface, resulting in more nutrient rich water. Fine. So here in this case, like the answer will be C, El Nino and southern oscillation. So monsoon is having an effect related with El Nino, right? So you can expect like a question like what are the factors affecting the Indian monsoon? And in the options, if you find the El Nino southern oscillation or La Nina, it is there, it is true, right? Fine. Let's take a look at Modoki condition. See, Modoki means it's actually a phase of El Nino and La Nina. Okay, each El Nino, it's not always same. The previous El Nino was different from the other El Ninos. Okay, so what here happens is that like the place where this warming of the ocean water is taking place, it can change. So Modoki means a phase of both El Nino and La Nina. In El Nino's case, we were having warm water on the southeastern Pacific, right? But if it is El Nino Modoki condition, El Nino Modoki condition, instead of the eastern Pacific, warm water will lie over the central Pacific. See, normal El Nino case, we are having warm water here. Okay, rather than the El Nino Modoki case, we will be having warm water over the central Pacific Ocean. Okay, see now this actually now the El Nino is being defined as like the warming of central and equatorial Pacific Ocean. It is both considering central as well as equatorial Pacific Ocean. If you are having warm water on the central or eastern side, we can call it as El Nino, right? But specifically in Modoki's case, what happens is that warm water will lie over the central part. So where we will have low pressure system. On the center we will be having low pressure, and on the both sides will be having high pressure because the air will rise up from the low pressure. Understood? Now consider the Modoki phase of La Nina. In the case of La Nina, we were having cold ocean water lying over the eastern Pacific, right? But in this case, it will be extended towards the central Pacific. The case of like La Nina Modoki, we will be having high pressure over the center and low pressure over the both sides of the Pacific, on the western as well as eastern. Okay. Fine. Any doubts regarding the El Nino, La Nina, or like their Modoki phase? Now think about the effect of El Nino Modoki. Now in the previous case I told you that in the case of like El Nino, we will be having more tropical cyclone incidences on the southwestern Pacific Ocean or western Pacific Ocean. Okay. But in the case of El Nino Modoki, it will change. More incidences will be over the central Pacific. Understood? At the same time, in the Atlantic also, this El Nino Modoki's effect is different. If it is normal condition on the Atlantic, we will be having less hurricanes. But if it's El Nino Modoki condition, we will be having more hurricanes over the Atlantic Ocean. Understood? So their effect is different. This question here is 2010. A new type of El Nino called El Nino Modoki appeared in news. Again, this El Nino Modoki was in current affair at that time. That's why they asked a detailed question on El Nino. Otherwise, you don't need to study or go in depth towards this topic. Since this was in current affair only, they asked a question related with El Nino Modoki. In this context, consider the following statements. Normal El Nino forms in the central Pacific, whereas El Nino Modoki forms in the eastern Pacific. True or false? False. It's the other way, right? Second question. Normal El Nino results in diminished hurricanes in the Atlantic Ocean. True or false? True. But El Nino Modoki results in a greater number of hurricanes with greater frequency. Speaking about the Atlantic case, right? Again, it will be true. So the second statement is true and first statement is wrong. So the answer will be 2 only. Now look at the main question that has been asked from this topic. In 2014. So in 2010 and in 2011, we were having prelims question regarding the El Nino, and in 2013 they asked a question related with the El Nino for your mains examination. So if you have seen a person who has seen the question in the prelims exam for 11 as well as 10 and prepared that topic would be able to answer the mains question in 2014. Fine. Most of the unusual climatic happenings explained as an outcome of the El Nino effect. Do you agree? Fine. So we can see, I'm not going in detail towards the mains topic. We'll discuss this thing later while taking class for mains exam. Just understand this. Here in this question you have to explain the climatic effects of El Nino. Changed precipitation pattern or changed atmospheric air circulation, effect on Indian monsoon, and everything can be discussed here. Okay. And this part, do you agree? So here in suggestion you can always include climate change. See, the entire unusual climatic happenings is not always related with the El Nino. Now climate change is also resulting in this changed climatic pattern. So you can mention that while writing an answer for this question. Understood? Now let's solve a model question from this topic. Which one of the following descriptions denote the phenomenon of El Nino? It's an ABCD question. So you cannot see the right side, left side because it's been cropped. So just go through the options. First option, a violent rotating column of air extending from a thunderstorm to the ground. True or false? No. The deflection of the ocean currents in the northern and southern hemisphere due to the rotation of the earth. What do we call that phenomenon? Coriolis force. The third one, the revolving tropical storm of the Caribbean and Gulf of Mexico. No. Then the last one, the anomalous widespread warming of sea surface of the tropical east and central Pacific Ocean. Correct. So remember that core point. See, suppose in the case it were not specified as like East or Central Pacific, rather they were giving it as Northern Pacific or Southern Pacific. It is wrong. This event is specifically limited to the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Always remember that. Fine. The recent Godzilla El Nino was one of the strongest and longest in history. Which of the following would be the results of an El Nino? The question is about the effect of El Nino. Again, the first option, the reduction in the amount of plankton which reduce the number of fishes in sea. True or false? True. On the eastern Pacific, the upwelling will not take place. It will reduce the nutrients so that the phytoplankton will not thrive. Understood? Second statement, deficient rainfall throughout the world. Throughout the world, we are not having deficient rainfall. Rather, on certain regions, we will be having more rainfall, and other regions will be having deficient rainfall. So the second statement is wrong. Now, if you apply the elimination method, first of all, we can eliminate these statements without 1, so that we can eliminate B. Okay, second statement is wrong, so that again we can eliminate options having 2. We can eliminate D. So here the options which are left are like 1 only or 1 and 3 only. Now let's see the third statement, distortion of equatorial atmospheric circulation. Distortion means change, or it is being disturbed. See, during normal condition we will be having Walker circulation, right? But if you are having in either El Nino or La Nina event, it will change the equatorial air circulation, right? So again, it will be the true. So that the answer will come out as 1 and 3 only.